Jindal Global University, Sonipat, Delhi. This institute has been closely associated with us from its inception 2014. Thirdly, our dear father, Walter Fernandez, the keynote speaker of the day, a person who is going to take all of us to think differently, collaborating, cooperating, blending social work with peace building. Dear Father, how this idea started when you said, Ando, go ahead, we will support you financially. And the whole idea shared with our faculty members and the students, and they worked very hard. Immediately they appointed the convener, Sir Bernick. Along with other faculty members, they worked tirelessly, and the students cooperated and made this dream a reality. We thank you, Father Walter, and welcome to this international conference. Then our dear and loving Professor Rosemary Savage, Director of Center for Peace and Gender Studies, Kohima, and advisor to the Naga Madhya Association, NMA. Professor also has been our awardee of peace. Professor has been busy so many years and setting a trend in Naga society, a proud daughter of Nagaland and a very academically sound, objective thinker. And today we are so happy to have Ma'am Rosemary as our panelist, and I'm sure and we are sure you are going to set a trend in our process of thinking. Welcome, dear ma'am, along with two of NMA counselors and helpers. Welcome, dear friends. Then our dear and loving another former faculty of NASER and a peace builder and interreligious coordinator of Manipur is none other than a dear loving Dr. Devin Sharma, a great friend of ours who has been associated with us from 2006. And last 20 years, he has been part and parcel of this peace program and this academic program of NASER. Dear Dr. Devin, most welcome. We have Varghese, Director of Vocational Training Center, Third Mile, and beloved sisters from different convents and NGOs, and the faculty members of different colleges, principals, and CEOs of different registered societies, and media persons, our faculty members, and dear loving students. It is a memorable day, a historical day, a red letter day for NASER. I send also my heartfelt gratitude and generous support to all the sponsors of this event. The first, Think Well Education, Bhopal, Peace Channel, Miserio Germany, Missio Germany, NUSRC, Guwahati, for their unwavering financial support. We also deeply appreciate our collaborative partners and institutions, OP Jindal Global University, Christu Jayanti College, Bangalore, National Association of Professional Social Workers in India, NASPI, and also take opportunity to appreciate and acknowledge all the faculty members and present all those present here to make this international conference meaningful learning process. This conference brings together great minds and passionate hearts to address pressing social challenges. Through discussions, research findings, and collaborations, we aim to shape policies, resolve conflicts peacefully, and bring sustainable and meaningful action towards a just and peaceful society. And our main objective of this coming together is to promote in the interconnectedness of peace and development in the social work perspective. Therefore, I would like to just nurture the importance, the relevance of this conference. This international conference provides a crucial platform for social scientists, peace activists, and policymakers to explore peace building, conflict resolution, and transformation. From the prolonged Middle East conflicts to ethnic tensions in Nagaland and Northeast India, where decades-long Naga conflict and the recent Meitei-Kuki violence in Manipur persist, societies continue to face instability and marginalization and prevent development and growth of children, youth, women. With Nasser and Peace Center leading in peace education for last 2 decades, this gathering fosters knowledge sharing and policy recommendations, equipping scholars and practitioners with innovative strategies to address local and global conflicts. In a fragile world, such dialogue is vital for a just and harmonious future. Dialogue is very important in the interpersonal level, intrapersonal level, intergroup level, and intergroup level to resolve conflicts in an amicable and non-violent manner. I would like to speak a few lines about Nagaland because this online screening it's moving, and people in the national and international level, they're listening to us. I would like to say a few lines about Nagaland. Nagaland in Northeast India is renowned for its unique tribal heritage, vibrant festivals, and strong community bonds. Home of 16 major tribes with distinct languages, customs, and strong community bonds. The famous Hornbill Festival showcases its rich cultural diversity with over 70% forest cover. Nagaland is a biodiversity hotspot. It is also one of the few Indian states with a special autonomy under Article 371A, preserving traditional laws and customs. We repeat this because this is our privilege and prestige as Nagas of Nagaland. Well, coming to Chomukudima, where our institute is located, is known as the land of opportunities. It's emerging as a center for education, governance, and economic growth, paving the way for innovation and sustainable progress. Despite insurgency-related challenges, peace efforts and emerging infrastructure projects foster development and socio-economic growth and development. Now, having worked last 25 years in Nagaland, being there, I would like to share my personal perspective of this Indo-Naga conflict. I've done my doctoral studies on this. I thought this is a time to flag off and tell what is the findings. I'm just bringing out as an introductory note to this international conference. I'm putting it as a bird's eye view, a person from outside looking at the Naga society, at the same time, a fish eye view, living with people, and how we can visualize this issue. And we also will be speaking about Manipur issue, and we will also be speaking about, in the paper presentation, will be presenting international and Middle East issues. So it is a compiling of different issues and finding solutions, how they settled their difficulty moments, and we learn from them. And we look forward to resolve our concerns and challenges that we face today. Therefore, I would like to bring to your notice this conference is more than a gathering of minds. It is a call to conscience. Peace is not just a dream or a duty of government alone. It is a responsibility of all of us. A shared responsibility, knowledge, skill, competencies. We cannot afford to let another generation be deprived of security, health, education, livelihood, development, and dignity of human life. The absence of lasting peace has told our progress since independence, leaving our youth without hope, our women unheard, and our communities trapped in unending strife. Can we not think differently from today onwards? Can we not finally choose peace and non-violence as means to resolve it? It is time to break free from the chains of violence and embrace a future where our children grow up in a land of opportunities and not a land of bloodshed. As a missionary priest, a peace builder, and educator, I urge every leader, every citizen, every youth, and every mother and father, let this kind of seminars and conferences should discuss and give the public a guidance, prepare a roadmap, and teach it well that we may flag it off in a right direction for the growth, development, and sustainable peace of Nagaland and Northeast India. A way forward, I have put 6 points, very interesting points. I'm not going to nurture. This will be published, will be shared with you, and it will be coming soon into your what is called the files. First, I suggest grassroots peace building through civil society engagement. It has been top-bottom approach. Now the time has come, bottom-top approach. Blending both, we bring thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Top level, bottom level, collecting informations, data, and bringing the real people-oriented, community-oriented, tribal association-oriented, church-oriented, academicians-oriented, an inclusive approach for peace building. Can we look into this issue and inclusive of government, non-governmental agencies coming together and creating a platform to think, to discuss, and to plan and develop a sustainable solution for Naga issue. I studied the Northern Ireland Good Friday Agreement of 1998. The Community Relations Council helped bridge Protestants and Catholic dividing issues. Then coming to Nagaland, the Naga Reconciliation Forum for Naga Reconciliation has facilitated dialogue between various Naga factions. The action forward, what we suggest, an inclusive platform where youth, women, academicians, government, non-governmental agencies coming together to discuss and to find a solution and establish its branches not only in the national level, state level, district level, subdivision level, and even the village level to discuss this issue from bottom top and top bottom level approach. Second, what we suggest is active engagement of youth and women in peace building. When you look at the youth, over 60% of conflict affected populations we see in Nagaland, but are often excluded from peace process. People who are affected, infected with the conflict are not part of this process. So therefore, it is such a need, clarion call to bring our youth into discussion process, platform. Peace agreement involving women are 35% more likely to last a sustainable solution. It is found after the Rwandan genocide, Cambodian genocide, and Philippines. These are the models that we have in our hand. Rwandan genocide, 50% of women are in the parliament as a parliamentarian, and they decide how Rwanda should move. The third way forward, economic development as a peace strategy. This is the most important segment where the youth, where you people of Nagaland and even the Naga Lean concept, we will be bringing it up that because the last framework agreement has been signed with the government of India with NSCNIM, and keeping Nagaland as the center, how this problem can be resolved with different economic packages for Naga inhabited areas of Northeast India. Look at the South Africa post-apartheid economic reforms. Everyone who was affected were given economic package to enhance it. Look at our own Bodo militant and how they resolved issues a couple of years back. Economic package for all inhabited area of Bodos and the universities, medical colleges, and enhancement of different governance brought peace to Bodo militant borderland. Coming to the third one, institutionalizing peace through a commission for peace, justice, and reconciliation. There should be a commission in the government level who will be supporting and calling in the stakeholders for dialogue. Look at the Philippines between Muslims and Catholics, Christians. It is the Peace and Justice Commission continuously help them to come for a dialogue, and the government and the civil society played people to come together. Look at the Rwandan genocide, 1994. After the genocide, where 8 lakhs people were killed, it is the Catholic Church and the Christian churches and the civil society took initiative to bring the conflict parties of Hutus and Tutsis to come together and they reconcile, forgive. And within 10 years, when we visited Rwanda, it was surprising for us to see the Hutus who killed 8 to 10 lakhs of Tutsis. The Tutsis reconciled with the Hutus and they started to rebuild Rwanda. Can the Métis call Kukis to come back to Imphal and resettle down there in Imphal and give complete security, safety? Peace is possible. Believe me, peace is with will. If you have will to do, peace and development is possible. Therefore, institutionalization is the most important thing that we are bringing into this settlement of Indo-Naga issue. The fifth one is creation of fund. Till today, Government of India, Government of Nagaland, we know there is no separate fund for peace building, but there is a fund for war, conflict. Unfortunate. But can the Government of India set apart a commission for peace and justice and reconciliation and trickling down to the states and districts and bring lasting peace into the conflict region of Northeast India? Fund is very important. And lastly, this is the crust of issue, and with this I conclude this introductory note of this international conference on peace activists and social scientists. The 2015 Framework Agreement marked a milestone in the peace process between the Government of India and Naga political groups. However, 3 key disagreements remain. That is where the insurgents in the Naga political parties did not agree. Point number 1, as you all know, Naga flag. Second one is Naga constitution. And third one is emotional integration. I'm just bringing these 3 points. With this, I conclude. In negotiation, believe me, both parties give and take. In dialogue, both parties give and take. In arbitration, it is an enforcement. But we should negotiate any conflict that we face. This Naga flag, can that Naga flag, as FNR, always speak about it? Wherever the Naga community is there, inhabitants are there, even including Myanmar, can this emotionally, can we not connect, hosting the flag wherever the people are? Now, what is the restriction? Replacing the flag. That is the negotiation. We should take further for the negotiation and plead to bring this flag concept a reality. You look at Karnataka, as Ma'am Rosemary was speaking about it. Look at Philippines. Look at the different countries. They have their own flags. Look at New Zealand. Maoris and New Zealand people. Maoris are different entities, and New Zealand people, mainland people are different. When you want to get in there, their identities are different. So, but part of a mainstream New Zealand. So, first one is this Naga flag. Second one is, constitution. I was reflecting with many people, many educated Naga academicians, and the people who have been working for peace. And I'm just collecting this information from them. Can we not take this 371A as our constitution of Nagaland? Will the government not agree to this? This is a point of negotiation. We have been reflecting, we are doing a lot of research, and this sharing is based on my reflection. And therefore, can this 371A should be where the customary laws are promulgated, upheld, and hosted as one of the most important aspects of governance in Nagaland. So let this 371A our constitution, and separate constitution, which need not be affecting the Constitution of India. What I feel personally, and there are good thinking people also feel this constitution should not be an issue for the peace activists and social scientists. Lastly, I have written a lot of things. The integration. They all know physical integration, territorial integration is a big question mark. But our people, can we not integrate emotionally? And can we not negotiate further? Take this issue in an inclusive manner to discuss and plan for the people of Nagaland, to have future for our youth, to have future for our children, and let prosperity, let peace, let development should come, and we should never be second to anyone. We are resourceful, we are competent, we are talented, we are intelligent, we are academically sound. We need the human rights to be respected, dignity of human life should be promulgated. Therefore, this conference is not just an academic exercise. It is a call to action. We must shift from peace rhetoric to peace action, orienting us towards plan and development with action. Each of us, leaders, educators, activists, and policymakers, has a role in building a resilient and peaceful society, and this is our responsibility. And if we miss this bus, our youth are missing a big opportunity. Therefore, justice and reconciliation through grassroots engagement should be promoted, empowering youth and women in decision-making, and decision-making process should be included. Economic development as a tool for peace should be established. Institutionalization of peace and reconciliation commission should be part and parcel of conflict-ridden areas, and negotiating a pragmatic resolution to the framework agreement, which is signed in 2015, should be the last agreement where you should build further to have future for our people in Nagaland and Northeast India. By working together and implementing people and community-centered, data-driven solutions, we can transform Nagaland and Northeast India into a model of sustainable peace, which they will come and study about our people, and how we resolve these prolonged, protracted conflict of Nagaland and Northeast India. With this note, I conclude my introductory and welcome note. I wish all of you, unlike other programs, we need to listen attentively, listen to learn, listen to plan, listen to take decisions. And I'm sure today and tomorrow is a very important day or important days for in our life as students, as principals, as academicians, as resource persons of different walks. We will make our Nagaland, our Northeast India, a better place to live for the next generation. A sustainable, planned society, and people where they live in harmony and peace. Once again, thank you so much for positively responding to this conference and enjoy and learn and share. Naisarians excel in knowledge and service.
Thank you, Father, for welcoming the gathering and for your inspiring introductory note. Our next segment is the most awaited keynote address. Dr. Father Walter Fernandez is a sociologist who has studied tribal, gender, and livelihood issues for 5 decades of his professional life. He is the founder and director of the Northeastern Social Research Center in Guwahati. Apart from his writing on tribal, gender, environment, livelihood, and peace and conflict issues, he is recognized as one of the most comprehensive writers on development-induced displacement in India. He has mentored a generation of scholars and activists, especially from the region of Northeast India, and has consistently encouraged dialogue between them and peace. Father, we are fortunate to have you with us today. As a token of love and appreciation, we would like to honor you, for which I would like to request Dr. Father Sipi enter to do the honors.
It's such a beautiful certificate. I don't know whether you have seen such. Thank you so much. Who like who trees in the poverty? Please take this.
Thank you, Father. The stage is yours.
Sorry about this interruption.
This is one, this is two. This is two, yeah? No, try to again.
Sorry about this delay. Good morning, friends. And Fernando, thank you for this opportunity you have given me to be here. It's a pleasure. And I begin this with a deep sense of humility because I'm not that involved. And yet, I have been involved in different ways in peace processes. And all that I'll do is to share some of my experiences. The theme I've been given is the role of social scientists and peace activists in peace building. And when I speak of peace building, I speak of it as a process, a long-term process. And it's important to begin with a definition of peace. What is peace? It depends on who the person is who defines it. For centuries, we have different definitions. There was Pax Romana, the Roman peace. The Roman Empire conquered other countries and imposed peace on them. Peace that meant obedience to the Roman emperor, acceptance as the Romans, as a race, as the supreme race, and themselves as subordinates. Then came Pax Britannica, the British peace, again a colonial peace, conquered other countries in order to develop itself, to use their raw materials and capitals for the industrial revolution of Britain and the remaining countries of Europe for their own industrial revolution. And they wanted peace that would allow them to exploit and impoverish these countries, use their resources for themselves, and the people would remain subordinate to them. Peace in that meant exploitation. And the third comes Pax Americana, which keeps conquering other countries in order to exploit their resources, in order to impose its military might on them, to keep its armaments industry going, and the economy that depends on the raw materials and armament industries going, and justifies it in the name of democracy. And you have others. So all of them find a justification which suits their need. The Romans spoke of unity. The British, whose conquests were for raw materials and providing a market for the products of the Industrial Revolution, called it civilizing education. We are conquering these barbarians of India, Africa, and civilizing them. What does that civilization mean? That's a different question. And today, the USA has its own justification of imposing democracy in the name of freedom. Self-glory, you have Israel, speaking of it as the promised land of God, God has given this land as though God were a real estate dealer. God has given us this land, so we are conquering it. So the Palestinians should leave, give us that land. Power which Russia wants in Ukraine. So security calls it. So you have justifications which are meant to justify the conquest by the conquerors. And that is not peace. You have the second stage today during the last 50 years, which takes the form of ceasefire. At the international level, it has become a ceasefire with United Nations managed peacekeeping forces keeping peace. Here in India, we have ceasefire, which is followed by accords. You had the ceasefire in Assam, the Assam Accord, ceasefire in Tripura, the Tripura Accord, ceasefire in Bodoland with an accord. Rajiv Gandhi signed 3 such accords. So he was known as the accordion prime minister. So you have such, but what do they mean? At the international level, ceasefire with peacekeeping in practice means the conqueror keeping the conquest. There has been a ceasefire in Israel, for example. The territories that Israel conquered remain in its hands. We have ceasefire. Trump is speaking about ceasefire. Europe is speaking about having peacekeeping forces in Ukraine, which will allow Russia to keep its territories. And action stops, but conquerors keep the conquest. In India, there is slight difference. Most cases of ceasefire are in response to the militant groups that are representing a certain cause. And when the state is not able to suppress the people there, it accepts ceasefire, but often it stops at that. So peace there in practice means absence of armed conflict, but not reconciliation. And then many of these accords end up as power sharing agreements between the government of India or state government and the militant groups, an elite getting power, and that's where it stops. There is lack of reconciliation between people. The people don't get much out of it. So it can become a power sharing agreement. Now, where do the social scientists and peace activists stand? In the first, the colonial Pax Romana, Pax Americana, the peace activists cannot have any role because that's nowhere near being peace. But in these accords, peace activists and social scientists can have some peace, some role, a limited role to create, to analyze, understand, and the possible areas of agreement in such a way that the people get as many benefits as possible within this power sharing agreement. But the real peace in which we, the social scientists and peace activists, can get involved. Peace that is not the elite sharing power, but justice to all, and reconciliation between peoples of communities in conflict. In other words, I'm of the view that the social scientists and peace activists have a very limited role to play in the nationalist struggle. The Naga India Accord, for example, I'll come back to that. We have some role to play, but very limited. But there is a big role to play in ethnic conflicts in the Northeast. The nationalist struggles are there, but most of them under ceasefire, like the Naga ceasefire, where some negotiations are going on with the government of India, but in those areas, we have relatively little role to play. There is some, but the Northeast has today become a region of ethnic conflicts. Why? I won't get into that, it will take too much time. But most of them around land, around resources, around privileges, around identity. And I believe that we have social scientists and peace activists have a major role to play, and we should get into that. The first thing that we need to realize that this type of peace is not something that can come through negotiations between the governments and the militant leaders, but through a long process of dialogue between ordinary people, grassroots level leaders. So it's not a negotiated process, but a dialogical process. And that is where we, the social scientists and peace activists, have a major role to play. It's a step-by-step process and may not really include the final solution that deals with the cause of the conflict. Because the final solution has to come through a level, negotiations at another level. It may not include, but there is the whole process in which we can and we need to get involved. The first step in that is to understand the causes that led to the conflict. Why? Why do I speak of causes? Because very more often than not, we only know the trigger that led to the conflict. But there is a whole set of causes that have led to it, and then there is one trigger that lights the fire. For example, the 2016 Eastern Nagaland Inaugural conflict. There was a long process, but it's just attributed to one incident, the killing of that couple, the Santam Inchiger couple on 6th February 2016, and the rumor that spread that they were murdered by the Inchiger and the attacks that began. It's important to know, to understand the causes, why it has led. Equally important to know the histories. In every conflict, both sides create a new history, pointing out the other side as someone who has been an aggressor all along, and our side as the victim. And new histories are written to suit that confusion. And the social scientists And one thing that is really needed in this region is a new look at its history, which on which very little has been done. I have a friend who often tells us that a child studying in Dimapur knows everything about the fort of Jhansi and fort of uh, uh, Junagadh in mainland India, and does not even hear about the Dimasa fort which is there next to them. Because we study what is called the All India history, but very little has been done in the form of the history of the Northeast. And that is where these histories, which speak of themselves as victims and the other as the aggressors, get the upper hand and continue the conflict. When in fact, when you go to the past, we realize that it is a history of cooperation and conflicts their way. For example, you have the Meitei Thankul Naga enmity. If you go back to the past, you realize that they have the whole set of myths which speak of the Thankul and Meitei as children of two brothers. You realize that when in the 16th century the Maharaja wanted to build his palace, the foundation stone had to be blessed by the Thankul priest. There was a cooperation and different forms of agreement and also disagreement. And we need to face that we can live with those agreements and cooperate with each other. That is something that our past history shows us. So the researcher, the social scientist has to begin by analyzing the causes and the process of the conflict without expecting immediate solution, but slowly go towards the last step, which needs a long preparation. The role of the social scientist and peace activist is to prepare the first step of people-to-people dialogue. Because only agreements between militant groups and the governments will not bring lasting peace. There has to be reconciliation between peoples. So the first step is to create those contacts which create an atmosphere of openness to talk to each other between the communities, ordinary people. The work of the peace activists is to initiate contacts with grassroots leaders of social communities and dialogue with them to prepare them for this dialogue. The first step is the social scientists, peace activists collaborating. The social scientists in research to understand the causes. The peace activists in establishing contacts, and the two sharing their understanding with each other to work together to facilitate dialogue. So it begins with a study of the causes and histories. But at this stage, the social scientists and peace activists have also to look at their own attitudes, towards the other communities, because they too belong to the communities in conflicts. All have been brought up with the same histories, same attitudes of division and conflict, and they need to work on it. So they have to understand their own attitudes and internalize the need for dialogue and and dialogue and reconciliation, to understand the others, which means that the social and peace activists recognize that they have been brought up with the same prejudices and they need to free themselves from those attitudes. And that will take a long time, which means that they do not have to wait till they free themselves from these attitudes before dealing with the communities. But they need to see the need for dialogue and then they go along with them. It's an ongoing process. And training, the social scientists training the peace activists is not the social scientists telling the peace activists what they are to do, but dialoguing with them and identifying the steps of dialogue and reconciliation together. Based on that dialogue, they reflect together on ways of identifying grassroots leaders, of approaching them, possible steps in the whole process, and tools of dialoguing with them. That too has to be a process of dialogue, not telling the leaders what to do, but together reflecting whether they want conflict or peace, peace with justice, and what steps they can take together. So based on this initial contacts, they try to bring a few leaders together. And that first step is not negotiations for peace, but a confidence building measure. Any peace between communities has to begin with confidence building measures between leaders. And they will face many obstacles. First of all, they themselves, social science and peace activists, will find themselves on the defensive because they have been brought up with the same stereotypes, the same prejudices. There is also the fear that their community will question them. Who are you to take these steps? We are fighting against that enemy. The militant groups may question them, and that's very dangerous. So they themselves would feel a sense of insecurity because their security lies in those prejudices, enmity towards the other. That's what they have been brought up with. So, amid this insecurity, training may mean searching for small openings that can bring them together to understand the need for change. So, what the social science does is to help us peace activists to identify areas on which the members of two communities can work together and through it understand each other. For example, I've seen some groups having self-help groups made up of groups in conflict, women of groups in conflict. And while working for income generation, they dialogue, help them to dialogue with each other, understand each other. There are many processes. The social scientist trains oneself and peace activists through this analysis. And then there has to be, they together try to bring the leaders of communities in conflict together at some stage. And there are risks involved in it too. Social scientists identify them and prepare peace activists for taking the risk. But while doing that, do not ignore the dangers, but deal with them, work out a strategy together. And it's always useful to have this type of a meeting of local intellectuals, peace activists, and local leaders together as a first step. And it means that to do this, you don't need only, you cannot survive only with intellectual conviction. It needs emotional acceptance of the need. So social psychologists and other social scientists work together to identify issues of discord, of possible compromises required, and possible ways of understanding. Intellectuals and peace activists of two sides together discuss them together. Then use this common understanding arrived at in their dialogue with their leaders to facilitate dialogue and understanding they have to search for a solution together. Another role of the peace activist, of the social scientist, is to help the peace activists realize that it's a long process. Peace will not come overnight. And also help the leaders realize that it's a long process. That peace and reconciliation are so slow processes, and the peace activist has to deal with the process. Find some way of helping the people to work together, and through this, they get some benefits, maybe income or some other. It also means you cannot stop at one meeting. You have to plan many meetings and dialogue outside those meetings. But at every meeting, you take one small step forward. So, use these meetings to discuss ways of working together to understand the values of unity and also to find ways of dealing with the community, with the militants, etc. We have seen that happening in Nagaland, for example, in the 1990s, the way civil society groups like the Naga Mothers Association dealt with the militants every time they saw violence. They came forward and got the militant groups to stop that violence in many cases. So, what we need is analysis and step-by-step approach. First of all, ongoing contacts and dialogue may not lead to immediate solution. They can only give indications of further steps to take. In doing that, social scientists plays two roles. First, the activist wants immediate solution. The activist is often impatient, immediate results. So the social scientist needs to accompany the peace activist during this long process of facilitating dialogue between communities. Secondly, the activist wants activities. So many peace projects have just become a series of activities that do not take us beyond, much beyond the day-to-day activity. The social scientist has to learn about, understand these activities, but help the activists to combine those activities with intellectual analysis and in such a way that can share these benefits and the process with the community. And through this thinking together, the social scientists and peace activists together can identify steps such as activities to undertake to facilitate this long process. What activities? We cannot just think of theoretical peace. People need activities, need benefits, but what type will help in this process of search? So, what it means that the social scientist helps the peace activists realize that you are not working for the final solution. You are moving towards a long process that may or may not lead to the final solution, but helps with reconciliation between people. And then you also need to look at alternatives. The suggestions that are made by various communities. I know I'm stepping on dangerous ground here. Take, for example, suggestions today. The cookies saying our own administrative system. Can they be one? Will that really bring peace? Or will it be one more accord in which a few leaders get power, but the enmity, the Naga, Kuki, Meitei enmity remains unchanged? What type of solution can we have? Take the whole solution of Nagaland. Is it possible? What type of integration do you need? What type? What are its implications? What are the implications of bringing all the Naga inhabited territories together? What happens to the non-Nagas living in those territories? The social scientist has to analyze and see alternatives. The biggest issue of ethnic conflicts today is land. See the border area, Tripura, Karbi area, Manipur. The tribes are speaking in Manipur are speaking about Article 371C giving them right over that land. But the social scientists need to analyze it. What after that? What's happening in Manipur, for example? The Nagas and the Kuki are fighting for their ownership of their land. But in the process, one sees so much internal land alienation within the tribes. Go from Imphal to Moray, 100 kilometers. On both sides, land has been handed over to outsiders, tribal land. By who? By tribal leaders who fought for ownership, got land from the poorer tribals, and have sold it or mortgaged it to outsiders. And it's happening all over. So, does it really solve the problem? Is it time? Yes, we accept those rights, but isn't it time? Together we searched for a new form of developing that land instead of just speaking about ownership in such a way the tribals who own that land can develop it and create jobs, create income from that, and develop themselves as communities, and not just speak of ownership. So, I think I've gone too far. I've taken too much time. Sorry about it. I So I'll stop here and say now, then do they have a role to play in the negotiations? Not directly, but I think the social scientists and peace activists together have a role to play of analyzing the issues being discussed and creating opinion on possible alternatives. What does Nagalim mean? What type of Naga unification can bring peace and development? What is the meaning of that? Analyze it, study it, write about it, create public opinion in such a way that the people as a group get involved emotionally in the issues and search for new solutions that are not rigid, solutions that may mean compromises that bring people together. What does the one sole administration mean in Manipur? Can there be a separate Kuki administration? Can there be peace without involving the Naga, Meitei, and Kuki people? Will the conflict stop? What type of unification? What type of administration? What type of alternatives are possible? And that's the role of the social scientists together with peace activists. So I've just spoken of a few possibilities, but what I'm trying to say is that real peace is not just accords and power sharing. Real peace, yes, that power sharing is required, accords are required, many new things are required, but there will not be real peace without involving the ordinary people in that, and without reconciliation between peoples. And that's the major role that social scientists have to play through their analysis. For example, can they use research as tools of contacting people, of understanding people, and preparing them for peace, and so on. That's the role that the social scientists and peace activists have to play. And that's where I stop. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Father, for enlightening us with your valuable insight in this. Your words is giving us so much to reflect upon. Thank you once again, Father. It is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished chief guest, Professor Dr. Wesley. He is with us online. While waiting for our professor, can we all stand for 2 seconds and do a stretching? Yes, we've been sitting for a long time. Yes, you can stretch around, relax. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Watson. Please unmute it. Unmute it. You don't unmute it. Done? Done? Hello, Professor. Good morning. Can you hear us? Please unmute. Unmute. But he needs to hear us. He needs to hear us. He needs to hear us. Not the voice. Hello. Hello, Professor. Can you hear us? Welcome to our conference. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished chief guest. Professor Dr. Bezlin Popovsky is a distinguished academic and expert. Hello? Professor Dr. Bezlin Popovsky is a distinguished academic and expert in the field of international relations, global governance, and the United Nations system. Professor has authored numerous articles, books, and research papers. His publications often explore the challenges and opportunities of the United Nations and the broader international system, focusing on its ability to address global crises. His area of expertise encompasses topics such as peace and security, international law, global human rights, and sustainable development. Professor's research has made a significant contribution to the understanding of the UN role in global peacekeeping, humanitarian intervention, and the challenges of multilateral diplomacy in the modern world. Professor is recognized for his dedication to advancing knowledge of global governance and for providing a platform for meaningful dialogue on the United Nations role in the 21st century. He is currently serving as a professor, vice dean, and executive director at the Center for the Study of the United Nations. We are excited to hear from your perspective. Sir, please take your time.
I'm happy to welcome and gathering. I cannot be present in person. Let me express how much we welcome the peace activism and the work in social science research that you undertake. I'm very well aware we in Global University also engage in latest research, especially my center does a lot on the United Nations and how this organization can be reformed as to address the problems in the world, including in peace and security. And as we see, the system was created in 1945, the United Nations system, and it will be an anniversary, 8 years from the United Nations Charter, adopted as a system in 1945. However, we can visibly say that there were expectations in 1945 which were not materialized. And unfortunately, the world has not been peaceful at all times in the last 80 years. For that matter, I engaged in a project with United Nations Charter, and we produced a report last September in New York, USA, a previous session of the week, which was supposed to trigger the changes in the United Nations Charter. And somehow, because I know the time, improvements that we see in the division of the United Nations. The first one is with regard to the Security Council, which is for the United Nations, and with the current composition and working method absolutely dysfunctional. We have found that the Security Council is organized and cannot approach major conflicts such as Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Hamas. Over the last 12 years, the Syrian civil war, which ended, but again, the Security Council did nothing for the Syrian people. We could, for many other situations, Myanmar, Rohingya genocide in Myanmar, the conflict in Sudan, which continues as we speak, and we just cannot the conflicts of the bigger obstacle is the fact that government has the right to veto. That effectively means that it has not adopt any action, that it cannot launch the regime. That's it. They can Sudan, because of the Russian veto, it cannot do anything. It's actually a paradoxical thing that the guardian is that in fact to it was expected to go very peaceful way with this people which voluntarily denied for. So instead of providing guarantee to Ukraine, its nuclear disarmament in 1990, all the Russian Federation brutal invaded Ukraine. And the Security Council was paralyzed. It cannot act because the Russians shared decision making. What was the just result in taking what has been done? We tried to restrict the window to many occasions with code of conduct, with floods, and another proposal came to there was an emergency session every time the council. It didn't work very well, although such sessions were, but the general family decisions are not mandatory. It cannot impose, for example, functions on the Russian. And the conflict can continue. But the only solution is to now to have a system where the veto does not exist anymore. The Security Council takes decisions with formal majority, total majority, and then that sanctions become mandatory on the entire world, which will prevent future wars, will sanction aggressors from the region. They still conduct the next big proposal that we suggest is to eliminate incumbent council. It gives the common idea that there should be more permanent members. Japan, India, Brazil, South Africa, and the entire African continent has two permanent members. The position is that there should be zero permanent members, no permanent membership in the state. It is a rotating membership, and a pickup criteria deserves to be more often, it can be more. It can be renewed in membership. about 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6. And but for any country, I mean, you can't find United States, France, and Russia, that should only. And something for my argument is that usually every constitution will limit the power already now. All the constitutions have to limit the power in government in the past. Right wing charter actually not only does not limit but increases the power already now. Not only they can nuclear weapons, but they can also be permanent members and they can use a veto individually in the Security Council against any non-constitution. And so there are many here that future world with that. Some people say this is not good now, that the world is divided and there are wars going on. But I see this is actually an excellent point. If this peaceful, beautiful public life remains ancient, the time of crisis is the time of change. But I invite you to join me, advocate to sustain the security by eliminating the veto in the Security Council. The next change that we suggest is publish whole parliamentary. We think about the European Parliament now. We think a law which is all representatives of the people, not only of government, would be an additional body of the United Nations to deliberate, to bring into the agenda issues that the General Assembly does, to also help with the decision making, to elect the Secretary General, for example. And I think such global parliament would be exactly reflecting the dreams of those who initially designed the charter. The drafters of the charter put in the beginning, we the people. So if the organization is about people, then we need to have parliament with representatives from all over the world based on the proportionality of population. Obviously, India and China would have the most of members in the parliament, and the rest of the countries as well. So, and world parliament is our second big suggestion. And the third one is to let climate change and environment as the new main purpose of the organization. The United Nations was established with the purpose of peace and security, economic development, and human rights. What we suggest is to, in addition to those three major purposes of the United Nations, also to add climate care and care for the environment, because we see how dangerous the world became with climate change, with environmental degradation, desertification, deforestation, so that a new purpose, we hope, will build a better world, green and peaceful and more prosperous. So this is my remark. I'm very happy to hear from you in the future. I couldn't listen to the previous speeches, so I cannot reflect on them. I'm happy to stay longer today. If you have more questions to me, I'm happy to answer. Thank you again for the invitations, and again, congratulations for your excellent work in the Northeast, and we are happy to collaborate further with Jim University. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your hard-working and valuable insight. We are very grateful for your contribution to this conference. As we come to the end of this session, I would like to invite Mr. Barney, the convener of this conference, to deliver the word of thanks. Sir, please take your time.
Good morning, one and all. Yes, I think we are running around 15 minutes late. I, on behalf of the management and organizing committee, would like to extend our greetings on the occasions of the International Conference of Social Scientists and Peace Activists under the theme Peace and Development for Sustainable Community towards Building a Resilient Society. I would pronounce that the inaugural session of this particular international conference is successfully ended by the grace of Almighty God and by the blessings of all enthusiastic people who present in this hall. Dear chairpersons, Ms. Bocatoli, assistant professors, Nazel, thank you for leading the program smoothly. You made us alert and brought to the tune of learning by active listening in understanding the significance of intellectual discourse of peace building and conflict resolution. Their most reverend Jos Makula, Emeritus Archbishop Diocese of Kohima, Nagaland, for bringing us to consciousness that God is the source of enlightenment and success. Indeed, help us to understand the meaning of peace and harmony with the presence of God. We believe that the results of your prayers will see not only in this conference, but in the excellence of world leaders and peacemakers. Dear Dr. Father Sig Anton, Principal Nazer, thank you for enlightening us by your inaugural address. We are blessed to have you in our midst, and you are the most suitable person to inaugurate such discourse or event, particularly in the field of peace building and conflict resolution. Thank you for your insightful thoughts towards solutions of the political crisis in Northeast region, role of youth, women, religious leaders in peace building and conflict resolution. Thank you for ensuring all of us who present here that this conference would experiencing learning session through active participation in the sessions. Dear Dr. Father Walter Fernandez, Executive Director, Northeastern Social Research Center, Guwahati, Assam. Thank you for your precious time, making yourself to attend physically and address us your wisdom and long experiences of peace building and conflict resolutions as peace activists and peace actors. In fact, your encouragement with contribution financially and intellectually made the dream of organizing such conference come true today. Thank you for inspiring us with your keynote address. We humble before you and seek blessings in our activities of peace building and conflict resolution. Dear professors, Dr. Veselin Povsky, professors and vice dean and executive director, Center for the Study of United Nations, We thank you for accepting our invitations to be the chief guest and address us in the inaugural sessions of the International Conference of Social Sciences. Thank you for addressing us and enlighten us with your insightful thoughts and experiences. Dear loving members of technical team, media, reporters, thank you for your commitment to make this program successful. Last but not least, I would like to thank the management, faculty, staff, students, paper presenters, scholars, who for attending these inaugural sessions and made it grand success. I, on behalf of the organizing committee, wish you all the best for the following session. Have a nice day and memorable day.
Thank you, Mr. Malik, for your kind words of gratitude. And now to conclude this momentous inaugural session, I request Music Club of Laser to lead us in singing on Laser Anthem. I kindly request everyone please raise as we join together in singing Laser Anthem. Thank you, Mr. City. I will hand over the next session to Dr. Really over the session.
We will begin our plenary session shortly. Yes, to stand firm for peace and justice. To paraphrase the word of Magdalene Lewis, in 5-10 years time, if your children, grandchildren ask, what did you do in those trying times because of war or conflict? We can all say, I stood for peace and humanity, and that's what your presence meant to me. Good morning and welcome once again. My name is Lily and I'll be your moderator. Today, we are supposed to have with us three distinguished speakers who will be touching on different important components of our theme. However, we regret to inform you that one of our speakers will not be able to join us as planned due to unforeseen circumstances. We sincerely apologize and appreciate your understanding. So join me in welcoming Professor Rosemary Devitu and Dr. Ben Patimayam Sharma. Thank you on behalf of everyone today. And as a token of our appreciations, we would like to facilitate you. And to do the honor, I would like to call upon our key speaker, Dr. Walter Fernandez. So now, may I call upon Professor Rosemary Devitu. I will request our key speaker, Dr. Father Walter Fernandez, to do the honor. Dr. Diben Patimayam Sharma, and Father, can you please do the honor again? Now I would like to call upon our next speaker, Dr. Diben Patimayam Sharma. Thank you. We will open a time for Q&A at the end of both the presentations, and I will request the audience to pen down their questions, and you could either raise your questions to specific speaker or ask general questions for both. And we also have participants joining us online. Please feel free to raise a Q&A through the chat box. As Father Walter Fernandez said, peace is much more than a agreement or a accord, or the absence of violence. The limit of peace process and its outcome are most evident in the context of justice, reconciliation, and accountability for human rights violation. And today we have Professor Rosemary Devitu, who will be speaking on the topic peace and justice, engendering the Naga peace process. Professor Rosemary Devitu is a retired professor of English literature at Nagaland University and a distinguished peace activist. She is the director, Center for Peace and Gender Studies Kohima, and advisor to the Naga Women Association. She is an alumni of IPLP Fellowship of the United States and also an alumni of the Thomson Foundation Fellowship of the British government. She specialized in foreign policy, lobbying, in political conflict resolutions, conflict reporting, and trade in Wales and Northern Ireland. Professor Rosemary wears many hats. Apart from being an advisor to the epic study of Naga women, she also served as a co-convener of the Global Naga Forum, and she is the first woman co-convener of the Naga People's Movement for Human Rights, an advisory board member of Southeast Asia Peace and Conflict Study, a drafting committee member on the Peace Study syllabus for Indian universities, a jury member of the World Court of Women for Peace, an expert committee members of the Northeast National Commissions for Women, Earlier, she served as a member of the Forum for Naga Reconciliations and was also the president of CEC, Nagaland University Teachers Association, and president of the Rotary Club of Kohima. Under the aegis of Naga Mothers Association, Professor Rosemary, along with her peace team, facilitated dialogue and brought conflicting parties to a negotiating table. She had also led 3 NMA Peace Mission to Myanmar as convener of NMA Peace Committee. And in 2011, in yet another landmark contribution, she initiated litigation which led to the 33 representations of women in urban bodies in Nagaland, paving for the long cherished dream for the representations of women in political leadership. And throughout the years, she has and continues to make valuable contributions, particularly in the field of reconciliation, peace building, and in dealing with human rights issues and political empowerment, advocating for human rights and for grassroots community. Now may I call upon the Director, Center for Peace and Gender Studies and advisor to the Naga Women's Association, Professor Rosemary Tivitu.
Is it good afternoon or good morning? Thank you so much, Father Anto, for the invitation to be here again at NISA. It's always a welcome change to be here in the presence of young scholars, young students who have a mind in building peace and in interactions on peace, which actually is very rare in our academic circles and in our academic community. What I'm going to talk this afternoon is looking at the Naga peace process and issues of gender. For the very fact that Naga society is a deeply, strongly patriarchal society, and even though in the Northeast we have many communities who are matrilineal, you find that patriarchy and its norms, customs, traditions are deeply embedded even in the social structure as well as in the working system. And most of all, in the political negotiations that are actually going on right now in the Naga peace process. It's an analysis that I've made. You may agree, you may not agree. But I think it's important to look at this perspective and see the ways ahead. What are the ways ahead that we can think of in involving women in the peace process? When you look at women across the world, you know that they play a very crucial role in preventing conflict, in building peace, and in helping countries recover from conflicts, putting their own lives at risk. However, we have seen over the decades, we have seen that women always remain on the periphery of the peace table and direct peace negotiations. And therefore, it is pertinent as social scientists, as peace activists, I think it is important to deliberate that we must include women's rights and priorities in peace and political processes by addressing social, cultural, and political barriers that limit their participation. The UN Secretary General's call for women transforming peace and security, which reaffirm women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in peace processes, political solutions, and peace operations, which are essential for effective peacekeeping. The SDG goals, number 5, on gender equality, aims to achieve gender equality and empower women and girls. It recognizes the importance of women in peace building and conflict resolution. The SDG 16, when you look at it, on peace, justice, and strong institutions, it aims to promote peaceful and inclusive societies and emphasizes the need for women participation in peace processes and decision making. The United Nations has also the Agenda for Women, Peace and Security, which recognizes the role of women in conflict prevention, resolution, and peace building. Resolution 1325 of the UN Security Council emphasizes the importance of women's participation in peace processes around the world. The UN report, which has been released after 23 years, after the Security Council resolution of 1325, which called for all parties of conflict in the world to ensure safety of women and girls and full involvement in peace processes. What are the key findings of this report? Out of 18 peace agreements reached in 2022, only 6 included provisions specifically related to women and girls or gender, and recent agreements range from 20 to 35%. Out of 18 agreements, only 1, that of South Sudan, was witnessed or signed by a local women organization. At the local level, women lead many successful negotiations for peace, ceasefires, release of political prisoners, prevent and remove tribal conflicts, or mediate local ceasefires. However, at the main negotiations, they remain sidelined from the many negotiations, and women were mostly completely absent from many and political talks on situations in Ethiopia, Kosovo, Sudan, Myanmar, and Libya. When we look at the process and Naga women come, and we must realize this, that we come from a culture of war and peacemaking. We come from a culture of war and peacemaking. And peacemaking, which was mostly the role of women and our mothers for decades and for generations. Yet not much is documented, as we find out in our history. Not much is written, nor are they recorded in the political history of the Nagas, whether it is in nationalism or in the freedom movement. Women have borne the brunt of violence, killings, rapes, and other forms of violence through the decades of the Naga political struggle. Since the 1950s, under the impunity of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which was implemented with no justice till today. A study indicates that incidents of political violence targeting women increased by 50% in conflict-affected countries between 2020 and 2022. The role of the Naga Mothers Association, I would like to correct our chair who said Naga Women Association. The Naga Mothers Association is an organization which began in 1984 and continues still today. The role of the Naga Mothers Association and the tribe women's organizations in Nagaland, the Naga Women Union in Manipur, and women in Naga areas of Arunachal, Tirak, Changlang, and Lomding, Naga Hills of North Kachar, and Bengma Hills of Assam have all been tremendous examples of resilience, solidarity, for accountability, for justice, and for peace. And therefore, engendering the Naga peace process for peace and justice will ensure that concerns of women are addressed and their participation is meaningful, which is of prime importance. For the last decade, Naga women have been articulating the importance of inclusion of women in the peace process of the Nagas. We have seen the Naga Mothers Peace Committee journeys into the Myanmar jungles across the borders since the 1990s, and the efforts to scale down conflicts and killings, which have contributed to peace in all Naga areas by women groups and organizations in villages and towns of Naga areas. We have also sought that women in the armed groups are given spaces in leadership for decision-making processes of space or for peace. And I think this is important because the very fact that there are very few women in decision-making levels in the armed groups that are on the negotiating table, negotiating for peace, also makes a big difference as to why we are stalled in the process of negotiations. Inclusion of women in the peace process will not only promote sustainable peace but also justice. There is limited representation in decision-making positions, including peace negotiations, and this is because the socio-cultural barriers and patriarchal norms have affected women's space in peace for a long time. And because of the traditional norm that women are supposed to be quiet. You're a good woman if you're silent. You're a good woman if you don't question. You're a good woman if you listen to your tribe co-host. And therefore, these kind of stereotyping of women in tribal communities is the same also in the Naga context. And I think these are experiences we have seen as far as even the peacemaking process is concerned. Engendering the peace process will also empower women to participate in decision-making processes, including peace negotiations. It will not only do that, it will foster development by promoting women's economic empowerment, health, and better education. And we know the statistics. I don't have to repeat. When you look at the status of Naga women in terms of health, education, the economy, literacy, we are still high, but we do not count the percentage of dropouts that drop out in rural areas after class 10, after class 8, after class 6. We still have a very high percentage of dropouts. When you look at the health sector, we still have many areas that still have hardly any access to good health. And this includes women, because traditionally, it is a shame for women to be asking the family, your husband's family, to look after you when you're sick. It is not done. It is not a part of our culture. Women are supposed to be quiet. We are supposed to bear the sickness. We are not supposed to be rushing to the hospital. And I think these are all very regressive ideas of the past, isn't it? For many of you young people here, I think these are regressive measures of the past which still continue still today. Education of the girl child, as I said, we stress so much on it, but how much of this kind of education really sees them to the top? By the time they pass their HSLC, by the time they graduate, they are told by the family that they have to look after the siblings, and that education of their sibling and their brother is much more important than them. In many countries, we have seen women hovering around the peace table. And in the Naga peace process, there has been active involvement of women organizations like the Naga Mothers in negotiation for peace, in cessation of hostilities, going as far as the Chinwin River in the height of tension and active hostilities. The importance of inclusion of women in the peace process is also valid and important at this critical period when we are faced with the long-drawn years of a peace process that sees no end. What are the challenges? Women's participation in conflict resolution, we have seen, is limited by the violence, by the rape, sexual assaults, as we have seen in Rwanda, we have seen in Kashmir, we have seen in Bosnia, as we have also seen in the Naga homeland. with atrocities against women, particularly by the Indian Armed Forces, which till today have not seen justice in the incidents that we can think of. Operation Bluebird in Oina, the Moulton rape and killings, the rape in the Woka district, stories that you have heard over generations, the rape, killings, and murders of so many hundreds and hundreds of women under the impunity of us, which we are unable to have any kind of justice till today. Secondly, one of the challenges is that cultural pressures and traditional norms which stereotype women does not encourage them to engage in the public arena. And there are also cultural norms which do not allow a woman to travel wherever and whenever she wants. We still have women being labeled, women who like to travel, women who are accessible, women who are able to go to the public and speak. We still have labels, very defamatory labels, even regarding such kind of women. And that's the kind of Naga mindset we are still reeling from. Fortunately, from the Forum for Naga Reconciliation, a number of women who are in the process, we also need to analyze and see how much of decision making do these women members really engage in within the forum itself. And when you look at the peace process between the two parties, the government of India and the negotiating armed groups, over the years, the peace delegation of the Naga mothers have insisted, also with the government of India, that they must include Indian women at the negotiating table, and we have also insisted with the armed groups that they must include women of their cadres, the higher cadres of their organization, that they must also be a part of this negotiation. And why are we insisting? We are insisting on this because men cannot negotiate for us. It is women who will know about the kind of future that they want for Naga women, the kind of future that they want for their children, the kind of needs, the kind of facilities, opportunities that they would like for the women. It is not the men who will plan and who will think, but it is the women who can do that. And I think this is why it is so crucial at this particular time when we are at the height of our negotiations, the presence of women at the negotiating table from not only the armed groups, but also from the government of India. And we must realize the government of India and mainland India has some of the most well-known, well-versed women academics in conflict studies, in peace studies across the country. And the services of many of these can actually be called to help and accelerate the process. So also, even in the Naga homeland, we do have many leaders of women's organizations who have struggled and who have stood, who have a future envisioned for Naga women and the peace process. I don't know if you've heard of Professor Radha Kumar. How many of you have heard? The former director of the Nelson Mandela Center for Peace in Jamia. Professor Radha is where the kind of negotiations that took place in the conflict in Kashmir. And she was the one who led negotiations in Kashmir along with the armed groups. And I think these are big examples for us as to where women, Naga women also can contribute in this peacemaking negotiation process. We also need to look at the question of impunity. Because of impunity under the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the redressal of crimes committed against women by the Indian Army over the decades, and to bring culprits to book and see that rape is a war crime as per the UN Security Council 1325. I would request all of you to read up the UN Security Council 1325, which was passed some years ago. It clearly stipulates that in any kind of armed conflict, when a woman is raped, it is to be labeled as a war crime. And anyone who has committed this will be tried will be tried in the court of justice for war crimes which are committed across the world. And I think for women, these are very important safeguarding mechanisms which we need to look at and we need to study and also insist that when peace negotiations take place, this kind of accountability must also be sought from the armed forces that have left us in shambles. We also need to look at enforcing mechanisms for enforcing and monitoring international instruments for the protection of women's rights to post-conflict situations. Many of us in Nagaland and in the Naga areas, we are in a hurry. I understood what Dr. Walter said, and even Father Anto himself had stated, that as far as the Nagas are concerned, we are more in a hurry to resolve this peace process. You have seen statements coming out from the tribe organizations. We have seen statements from young people's organizations. Everyone thinks that peace can come in the blink of an eye and that peace processes actually just end overnight. It doesn't. I give you an example of the Irish peace process. The Irish peace process that took almost 100 years. I was in Ireland during my training in 2006. The Good Friday Agreement was just about to be signed. The only parliament that they had been locked up for years altogether because of the conflict between the IRA and the nationalists, and no one could sit inside the parliament. And yet, finally, we had the sharing of power, and you had both the IRA armed group and the sitting nationalists finally coming on to agreement called the Good Friday Agreement. And I'm wondering whether we Nagas realize and understand. I know on many occasions, especially the younger generation, we curse the armed groups for taxation, for threats, for kidnapping, and there's a whole list of things that we like to push it on to the armed groups. But do we understand that in any kind of political negotiation, because they are armed organizations, negotiating for a political solution, there is bound to be a short period of power sharing. I think this is something the Nagas are not understanding. There is bound to be a period of power sharing where you will see members from these organizations and a sitting government and elected government sharing power for a period of time. Please read how power sharing has happened in Africa, South Africa, in Northern Ireland, in many of the conflict countries. These are the trends that we must understand. These may happen. It's not something unusual that they are asking for. These will happen in the long run. Why it's important for advocacy by civil society and women organizations is because till today, have we seen any civil society, tribe body asking that women be included in peace negotiations? Have we seen, have we heard? Yes or no? This is Naga society, mind. This is our strong patriarchal belief that decision making is only for men. You women sit around, run around for peace, go here, go there. People are fighting, go and tell them not to fight. No, it's your job. You are trained from your childhood to work for peace, and therefore that is your work. But when it comes to serious negotiations for the future of the Nagas, for the future of our land, for our nation, women can keep quiet, you take backstage, you're really not needed. And I think these are very unfortunate mechanisms that we see. But time has come for changes. I'm someone who believes very, very strongly in changes. Unless women are included, the difficulty we are looking at is who are these people who are negotiating at the peace table? Who are they? All men, isn't it? whether it's from the government side, whether it's from our armed organizations, they're all men. Men with egos, men who don't want to back out, men who will take a firm stand. What makes the difference in political negotiations? When the calming effect of women step in. When women come in to influence for peace, to work out for ways where they need not fight, where we can look at other options, when we can work out other ways. And this is why I have always strongly felt that the Naga peace process right now at the negotiating table needs women, needs the voices of women to be there to make changes and to change the destiny of the Nagas. And this is something very important. When we put in women in the peace process, when we engender our Naga peace process, we are also building the capacity of Naga women. And by empowering them, politically empowering them, this in the end makes them very good leaders for the future, because that is what we're envisioning in the future. It is also important for women organizations, and this is something many women organizations do not have. I think the very fact that our tribe women's organizations are all clustered in your own tribes under the direction of the tribe leaders, that there's no space for talking about other issues except under the direction of your tribe. If you are existing within such a setup, it is difficult to articulate. It is difficult to articulate for women's rights, and difficult to talk about women's space in the peace process. It is important for women's organizations to talk about gender-based violence. Gender-based violence, which may not only be sexual violence, but which is gender-based, where women are reduced to second-class citizenship, where women have no property rights, where women have no land rights, no ancestral rights, where women actually do not have any economic rights. It still exists in 80% of the Naga areas where women live in rural areas. We still have feminization of poverty, very important issues. I just want to flag two more points. One is on our director who had talked on the flag, constitution, and integration. My small bit on this is that the Naga flag, which has now become a huge topic of debate between the government of India and our armed groups, is not a new thing. When the Nagas started their struggle and when we declared our independence in 1947, we flew our own Naga flag, and that same flag is still being used today. And therefore the debate and the question of contention is the recognition of the flag. And why shouldn't India recognize the Naga flag? Why not? It is our flag. It is a part of our nation building. It is a part of our national struggle. You had Kashmir, just before Kashmir turned, statehood was taken away from Kashmir. You had Kashmir that had its own flag. Till today, I don't know if any of our friends are from Karnataka, but till today, Karnataka has its own flag. So young scientists, young social scientists like all of you, you must research, you must read more and see where are the other countries where dual citizenship, dual flags happen. Even in India itself, on specific days, the Kannada people will come out with their red and gold flag in the streets of Karnataka. And that is their flag, and they stand by it, and they have no hesitation. And the government of India cannot do anything. So my question is, what makes it so difficult for Naga people to understand that we deserve our own flag? And that this is a request not from the Naga political groups. This actually should be the demand of the Naga people, and especially of the Naga youth. The second thing is the constitution. Right from the first days of the Naga struggle, the Nagas had a Yazabo. We call it the Yazabo. The Yazabo is being used by all the Naga political groups. There are lots of similarities in the Yazabo. It is a code where strictures are there, what is to be followed, and is being used. And therefore, if it is going to be a constitution for the Nagas, which is going to talk about protection of our land, our resources, you must have read about a huge debate of oil exploration in Lotha areas. The Supreme Court has already given a ruling that what is above the ground belongs to the state. What is below the ground belongs to the central government. And therefore, no matter how much you scream and shout, your oil, your gas, the precious stones in the Naga areas, which is all under the ground, finally goes, the royalty goes, majority of it goes to the central government. And I think a constitution which guarantees your land, your resources, your minerals, your deposits, I think these are valid points for a constitution, a part of the constitution to be granted, which can be recognized. And finally, integration. I don't know how many of you have traveled to Myanmar or how many of you are from Myanmar. For many of us who live in the luxury of our homes, of our cities, you will not understand the poverty of our own Naga people across our borders. You will not understand. Only when you see it, it is like you're looking at Nagaland maybe 100 years back. Hardly any schools, no health facilities, no rations, nowhere to go, no shops. And now with the war in Myanmar, which is ongoing, there's absolutely nothing for them. And in such a situation, what kind of a future are we looking for them? Are we going to look at a future where we can at least do something for all those Naga areas? The Regma Hills in Assam. Identified into Assam, but they are Naga areas and they're all our own people. The Naga areas, the Zeme Hills in North Kachar, they are Nagas divided into Assam. We Nagas in Nagaland, because I know most of you must be Nagas from Nagaland, we suffer from the mental setup that thing that happens must be only for Nagas of Nagaland. Who are we? We are just a small segment of the Naga people. The reality of the process is that there are Nagas everywhere in other states. The Nagas are tributed to 4 states. What about Iraq, China, and very fertile areas, very big areas, very undeveloped areas. I've just been to Arunachal, Changlang district. I've been to the borders of Myanmar, and you will not believe the kind of struggles we have just across the border, just half an hour's ride from the border. How the Nagas that side are surviving in Myanmar. Very big issues for all of us who are studying peace issues, who profess to be peace activists, who profess to be social scientists. I think the things that you must analyze. And to end up my speech, I want to touch on Manipur before I ask my colleague to step in, the women in Manipur. I'm sure he'll be talking about conflict and conflict resolution maybe in Manipur. I think after all the lecture I have given about the participation of women and inclusion of women in the peace process, I find my theory is sidetracked in the case of Manipur. And why I will tell you. I was a member of the Citizens Tribunal set up by the People's Union for Civil Liberties, and I was in Manipur at the height of the conflict. We have, as a jury member, we have listened to witness statements of Kuki families, of Kuki girls, of families that have been torn apart, of people, parents whose children were killed, of parents whose children, whose limbs were torn apart. And then you hear live statements from young girls who were identified by the women, and handed over to the mobs on the streets. And that is where I come in to reassess and think that maybe the kind of theory I'm talking about also depends on situations. Because if we're having a situation where the Mera Pailis, who shared the Peace Prize with the Naga Mothers Association in 2013, we were awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award of Peace by the Times of India in Delhi. We shared the prize because for all these years, we stood together against AFSPA, we stood together against killings, we tried to make sure that peace came into our own states and into our own lands. But what made it difficult for our women in the valley of Manipur to rise up against their own women, to rise up against their own gender, to allow their own young men to sexually assault and abuse the Kuki women and the Kuki young girls? I think these are questions that we really need to look at. If we are talking of peace, we are talking of justice. If peace is to come, it must come with justice in any form, in any kind of violence, be it another peace process, be it the conflict in Manipur. And the conflict in Manipur, we must have peace. Peace must come. And how does peace come? Peace must come, I think, with the efforts of everyone, including the Nagas. Fortunately, the Nagas have played a very neutral role in this whole conflict. Many Nagas have actually helped Kuki victims, rush them with supplies, medical supplies, rush them for help. And I am saying this because the Kuki Mothers Association that live in Nagaland are a tribe unit of the Naga Mothers Association, and therefore we work closely with them. But at the same time, the Mera Pailis of Manipur are a women's organization. We have closely networked and worked all these years till last time's outburst of ethnic conflict. So I leave you with those thoughts. Time for social scientists also to see maybe about loyalty of women, patriotism to your land, to your people, maybe to your community. In such periods of conflict, what really happens to women? I think these are very serious issues we can think about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful talk on the role and the importance of inclusion of women in the peace process. And it is because people like you that the Naga women are privileged to have a strong institutions such as Naga Mothers Associations. So coming to our next speaker, amid the mayhem in the land of Gandhi, there is a need to revisit our fundamental duties as a citizens. As peace begins with oneself, it's time to draw the potentials of our spirituality with truth as the best of it. Dr. Depen will be speaking on the fundamental duties of citizens and significance of spirituality in peace building with special reference to the violent conflict in Manipur. And Dr. Depen Patras Patimayan Sarma is a peace activist, a scholar and a practitioner of peace and conflict transformations with extensive experience across various contexts in the Northeast region. He was conferred a PhD in social anthropology from the University of North Bengal on his ethnographic studies in Bhutan, an MA in applied conflict transformations from Panang Sastra University, Cambodia. As a peace activist, he is one of the founding members of Peace Corps Team Manipur and a founding president of Manipur Cycle Club. He was a senior research fellow at Volunteers for Village Development in Inaugural from 2019 and has worked as a regional consultant, facilitator for conflict resolutions program of the Henry Martin Institute, Hyderabad. Even Dr. Chen comes with he has right now he is the founding director of PINE. So today I would like to call upon Dr. Depen to kindly come on the dais for his time.
First of all, after having heard the pains of women in Manipur, let me begin by offering unconditional apology on my side for the extreme forms of violence against women and children. Uh, and I bow down to all of you to say sorry. This is the second time I'm saying apology, having returned to this institution after spending quite painful time in Manipur. I say this apology again because for you. I apologize because I know not many things in religious language, sinful things happening in Manipur. Those things that should not have happened. Especially because Manipur boasts itself as to be one of the cultural civilizations in the region with deep-rooted history. It is this history that shocks me beyond my control. And so my first duty towards the people in my own state, to my own people, to the rest of the humanity outside is to apologize. This apology has given me a moral authority to speak to you today. This is the only way I could regather myself, courage to face people outside Manipur and speak to you. So apology is empowering for me, to my experience. Let me again start my speech with my gratitude and thanks to Father Arto, who has kept this house, peace center, always open for people to return. Next year, share their experience. It's a wonderful, it's amazing institution emerging in the region. We can only help and support to grow more. Thank you, Father Walter, who is always a step ahead of us, who led us into researching why there is so much conflict and violence in Manipur. Given this work,